Recording has started.
Good evening, everyone. It's February 1st, 2022, and this is the regular meeting of the Board of Finance Subcommittee, Audit Subcommittee, held via WebEx. This is Lori Charlton, and I'll call the meeting to order. Members of the public, if you call to listen, you will not be heard by the committee members, and there will be no live public comment until called for by the chair during the meeting. The public is encouraged to send comments during or after the meeting to the following email: pobrien@fairfieldct.org. That email address is also spelled out in the posted agenda for this meeting. With that, we will move on to item 2 on our agenda, which is to hear, consider, and approve 2022 officers. I'm going to make a motion here. I would like to nominate Ms. LeClaire to be chair of the subcommittee, Mr. Mottola as vice chair, and Ms. Charlton as secretary. Can I have a second? Mr. Mottola. All right, all in favor of those officers? All right, it is unanimous. Congratulations, Mary. I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. And I guess we get to move on to the third item on our agenda, and that is to review and discuss changes to the independent auditor RFP. I know Mr. Foley forwarded a copy to us of the draft. And so is he with us here tonight?
I'm on the phone. It's Gerald Foley.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Foley. How are you?
Good, Miss Claire. How are you?
Good. Do you want to walk us through the draft and explain it to us a little bit, or do you want us to just ask questions?
It's up to you. Whatever you prefer.
Does the board have a preference?
I might suggest that we, unless we want Gerald to walk through, maybe we can just flip pages with questions and comments.
Sure. Okay. So I will open it up to the committee. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the RFP?
I do. So I just a general question. In several places, and maybe this is a question for Caitlin or Jared. So in several places, including right in the first sentence of the overview, we say that the town of Fairfield is soliciting proposals for the preparation of the financial reports. So we use the word preparation instead of audits. And I just wanted to understand and clarify that. So what are we actually saying there? I mean, we prepare the financials, correct? Or what does that actually mean?
I could speak to that. So what is currently done today is I received a massive Excel file from the auditors. And I basically fill it out using all of the financials in the Munis system, and they put the book together. So I think that's what's meant by preparation. So I put kind of all the data in, and then they probably go back and they have a Word document and they post and they kind of mix it all together, and they actually create the actual audit itself.
Okay, so there's no conflict in terms of them actually both preparing and auditing the statements. I mean, we're actually providing the data. They're just sort of compiling it in the format. Is that it?
Yes, in addition to filling out all the Excel files, I send Munis reports. So they're kind of probably auditing it from that point of view. They also come in and they use Munis. We give them a read-only ID, and they run reports themselves as well. So they're actually tying the data that I put into their Excel file to the Munis report.
Okay. I have a couple of, minor wording comments that I'll forward to Mr. Foley and Ms. Bassi and Mr. Schmidt separately that we don't have to go through. But on page 3, under auditing standards to be utilized, I have a question on I'm sorry, it's not under audit, it's under reports to be issued. Number 4C, we say one of the reports to be issued is a report on internal control over financial reporting on compliance and other matters. What are we referring to there? Because we don't get a controls opinion from the auditor, right? So what does that item mean?
I'm not sure if it's a couple pages in the audit itself, or Jared, do you know? Or not Jared, Gerald?
I'm not sure. Report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters.
So when we say report, typically that means an opinion. So I don't think they give an opinion on internal controls. I think they just give an opinion on the financial statements, and for the single audits, they give a separate opinion there. So that would imply to me that we're looking for an opinion on internal controls, which I don't think is in the current scope of what we have done. So that might need to be deleted if that's the case.
Yeah, that statement was in the last RFP. That's the exact same.
Yeah,
I think on the reports.
It might be. I mean, for public companies and other entities that require it, we might get an opinion on internal controls, but I know that PK O'Connor Davies does not do that for us. So I don't think that we want to, if that's not required, that would be a very significant change in scope in the audit if we were asking them to provide a controls opinion. So unless I'm misunderstanding something, I don't think that belongs there. But maybe you guys can clarify that. That's a whole separate audit, basically, and a whole separate opinion, if you will, normally. So as we look at this list here, when we say a report, typically a report means an opinion. So the first one, 4A, that would be the audit opinion, fair presentation of the financial statements. B, an agreed upon procedures for the town of Fairfield's, those education reports. C, I don't think is applicable. D, I think that refers to the single audits. E is, I think, talking about just the printed copies. F is, I'm assuming that's a requirement, the municipal audit questionnaire.
Yeah.
G, I'm not sure how G is different from D. And then H is kind of, they're going to help us with the GFOA process. But I would check on those two things. So C doesn't seem like it's applicable. And if D and F or D and G are something, are they the same or are they something different? So those are my questions there.
So normally we get like 3 bound reports from them, like the single audit is a separate bound report. I think that's what it's referring to.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I
normally
think,
get-
but then what does D mean? A report on compliance for each major program, report on internal control, and report on the schedule of expenditures for both federal and state assistance funding. I mean, I guess all I'm saying is we don't have to belabor this, but this section is describing the scope of the services, so it's really important that this is accurate because this is what their fee is going to be based on. And, at least item C is I think a significant departure from what we're currently doing, so.
So you're saying C, D, and G?
Well, I'm saying I don't think we C is in the scope of what we currently get done. And then my question is, are G and what does D mean? Is that the single audit or is it something else? Because if it's a single audit, is it duplicative with item G? Or I'm not really sure if D is meant to relate to something else. I mean, the bottom line is, what are we getting now from PKF O'Connor Davies in terms of reports and opinions? That's what should be listed here.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we can go back and look.
Okay. I also had, does anybody else, I mean, I was going to go on to page 4 unless anyone else has questions.
Yeah.
On
Okay.
page 4, there's under special considerations. I wanted to ask about that first paragraph because we say here in the middle of the paragraph, the auditor, by executing a contract, agrees to the inclusion in any official statements, disclosure documents, etc., the opinion thereon, and any supplemental and supporting information in the audit report, as well as to furnish the town with a consent and citation of expertise as the auditor and any necessary comfort letters. And I guess that, that struck me as unusual. I don't know if we've ever asked our auditor to do that. I would certainly assume that if we did ask them to do that, that would be subject to a separate fee arrangement. And I just, what does that really mean? Is that something that's applicable? And if it is applicable, do we really want to say that? I don't think we would, say that the normal audit fee would include that type of special work if it became necessary.
Which, Madam Chair, which part, if I may ask, is there a certain part of it that's?
So page 4, C1.
Yeah.
What we're basically saying there is if we're putting out a bond prospectus or whatever that's going to incorporate the audited financial statements, then we're saying if the auditors need to do anything, in terms of the underwriting of those bonds or whatever, anything that they're asked to do is included in the audit fee, and they would have to, do whatever's required. They would have to agree to have the reports up front included and, prepare comfort letters or whatever else is required. And all of that's included in the audit fee. And that struck me as unusual. So is this something that's actually done? Like when we issue bonds, what's the process around that, that whole process as far as our auditor goes? Does our auditor have to formally agree to the inclusion of the reports? Do we ever ask them to provide comfort letters?
Not as far as I know.
Lori,
No.
Okay.
is that what it's referring to, or is it just asking maybe a peer review letter that gets attached?
Well, it's saying here, the town currently anticipates it will prepare official statements, meaning a prospectus, in connection with the sale of debt securities, which will contain the general purpose financial statements and the auditor's report thereon. In addition, the financial statements and auditor's report thereon will be used in conjunction with providing annual financial information to all electronic municipal market access. And so it says the auditor, by executing a contract, agrees to the inclusion in any official statements in conjunction with the issuance of debt of the general purpose financial statements, the opinion thereon, and any supplemental and supporting information in the audit report, as well as to furnish the town with, consent and citation of expertise as the auditor and any necessary comfort letters. Again, I don't know if we do this, but normally something like that is not included in an audit fee. And I'm asking because I don't want to be putting out terms and conditions like this that are out of the ordinary course. So I don't know where this comes from or if this is typical of what we've seen in another state modeled RFP, but in my experience, it would be highly unusual to ask for something like that. So, and if it's not something that we've done in the past, I mean, if we ever asked an auditor to provide a comfort letter, that would be normally a separate engagement and we would pay them separately for that if it was necessary. It doesn't sound like it's been necessary in the past. So again, I question why we have that there.
Yeah, all I can comment is it was in the last RFP, so that I don't think that paragraph of that section has been changed.
Okay. Yeah, again,
so whether it's
if a firm proposes, they're basically signing up for this. So I wouldn't want to again, put in terms and conditions that are, that are not in the ordinary course. If we don't know what this means and we don't need it in here, I would just maybe check if that's something that you've seen elsewhere. I'm not sure why that's in there, honestly. Normally their engagement, they might have even mentioned it to us, but normally in their engagement letter, they'll specifically say, if we have to do anything else like a comfort letter, that's a separate engagement and there'll be a separate fee. You know, they wouldn't.
So you want to strike it from the word the auditor, so basically the second sentence, or I'm sorry, the third sentence?
I guess
do you
I'm
want to
just
put
asking why,
if applicable?
if I understand this was in our last RFP, but other than that, do we have any understanding of why this is in here? And is it in any example from the state? That's my question, because I just, again, it seems unusual. So that,
Lori, is it just asking permission to put our audited report and our audited financial statements, attach it to the bond resolution, like the data that's supplied with the bond?
well,
Maybe
it's asking
Jared
that. Yeah, it's saying that they can do that, right? Which I assume is already happening, but it's also saying that if required, they're agreeing up front for no extra fee to provide, you know, comfort letters or consent and citation of expertise, whatever that means. And if they were actually ever asked to do something like that, it wouldn't be part of the audit fee, I guess is what I'm saying. So, you know, maybe it's, maybe it's just striking the last words as well as to furnish the town. But, you know, maybe what you do is check the audit engagement letter that we have right now from our auditors, because I would guess that there's a provision in there that if they do any work like this, it would not be included in the scope of the audit.
Okay.
Okay, I don't want to take up too much time on that. Can I also ask on that same page, item C7, that looks old. It says the town of Fairfield administers a defined pension plan. The audit firm should have knowledge and experience of implementing GASB 67 and 68. I mean, those came out many years ago. I'm not sure why we're calling that out, but I assume we could delete that. Because it's just, right now, that's just part of GAAP, right? And then item 8, all special considerations listed above shall apply to the town of Fairfield and the town of Fairfield's Railroad Station Parking Authority. And can you just, why is the parking authority called out separately? What does that mean, number 8?
We just wanted to make sure that anybody who is submitting a proposal, that they understand that it's not just the town proper, but that there's also a parking authority component to this as well.
So there's a separate report required on a separate audit of the parking authority.
So they would be included in the same audit. In the past, they've had their own audit done. And so this is to call it out and make sure it's clear that from here on forward, that they would be part of this audit.
Okay, so does that mean that there will no longer be a separate audit done of the parking authority?
That's Caitlin. That's my understanding. I'm looking at Caitlin now.
Okay, so I think you guys know a little bit of the history from when Joe presented the audit this year, because that was a change, right? So in the past, the parking authority has never been included in our annual audit report. And it just kind of happened due to the fact that PKF O'Connor took over the smaller audit firm that had been doing the parking authority. So it made it sensible to kind of bring it all under one umbrella instead of having two separate audit teams at the town of Fairfield auditing the same period. There's still a discussion, so that's what happened this year. So our parking authority has been fully integrated into our annual report in fiscal 2021, as you guys know. Whether that continues or not, I don't know. I don't know whose call that is. If they are going to continue to have their own audit firm, I mean, they had been paying their own audit fees. They had been having a whole separate structure. Now that it's in our annual report, I don't know whose call it is to say, now it's a part of us, which I had never been before, so any fees that we had paid in the past did not include parking authority? Or are they gonna kind of continue to have their own audit and we're gonna put it into our audit report? I'm not sure. I don't know if
Well,
that's
I
the parking authority's call, I don't know if it's the administration's call, I don't know.
It
So-
seems to me it would be the parking authority's call too. I think they would have to vote on it. So I think Caitlin and Jared, maybe you gotta check with Baldwin on that to see what the proper procedure is and what's gonna happen. Because if we're gonna include them in our audit report, it would cost more money, right?
So
Does that make sense?
our understand, they don't have a lot of authority. The parking authority does not
Okay.
have a lot of, they're not in the charter. And they were established, my understanding is by ordinance, and their authority extends to setting rates. And that's pretty
Okay.
much it. And so, I'm not sure if their board votes to do whichever way, I'm not sure that it holds a lot of weight. But we'll double check that and we'll talk to
Yeah.
town attorney.
Yeah, I think the question is why did they have a separate audit to begin with? To Caitlin's point, I think the fact that they're included in the town's reporting entity now is one thing. Even if they've been included even if they are included in the town's reporting entity, it doesn't mean that they don't need a separate audit. They might have gotten a separate audit for some other reason that we're not aware of or that we don't appreciate. So it may be that either, the separate audit continues to be a requirement, but it also, the numbers get picked up in the town's reporting entity. I think we can't answer that question until we know why they had an audit and what the purpose of the audit was. And I think, I will say though, if we want to keep this in here, I don't think it belongs in a special consideration section. I think where that belongs is in the overall scope of the audit that you've described on item 4, page 3, which is reports to be issued. So if the parking authority is a separate audit that needs to be done, you should list it as a separate audit there, and be clear that that's another audit. It would also be included in the back section when you list all the separate fees, but not under this special consideration section. So, however we find out, whatever the scenario is and whatever the requirement is, if it doesn't require a separate audit, I don't think you need to say anything at all, honestly, because the firms that bid will have our CAFR. They'll see that it's in the reporting entity. They'll know, that it has to be included, and they'll build their fee accordingly. If there's a separate report that has to be issued, they need to know that, because then they're going to have to do a separate audit with a lower scope of just that fund, right? But we would, I believe, have to list that separately in the reports to be issued section. So that's a follow-up item.
But in addition to that, I just want to say one thing. I think they might be going out for RFP themselves. So I don't know what that means. I just think we need to figure out whose decision it is, because
yeah, and why they need an
audit.
Yeah, I mean, they may need an audit for some reason that we don't understand. Lots of times, separate audits are required to satisfy some, who knows, some other purpose that we may not be aware of. So if
they may have to do an audit by law. They're a parking authority, so I'm sure there's some requirements for them to do those things. So just check. That's all.
Yep.
With Baldwin and whoever you need to check with to make sure.
Yep. Okay, good. Because if that has a separate audit, I just think we need to be clear. I mean, that actually makes the proposal more, that's more work for the auditor, and it's, presumably would be they'd have to build that into their fee. So it's not a bad thing. I think we just have to be clear if what they're expected to do, because if they're expected to issue a separate opinion, obviously that changes the scope. Okay. I would say on page 5, again, I'll give some smaller comments separately. Just some things like item F4. Maybe this sounds very outdated. It sounds like it was written for a world before there was an internet. We're saying we'll provide them reasonable access to a telephone, photocopier, and scanner. I mean, I'm sure what they're going to require is, Wi-Fi access or some kind of internet access if they're on site to be able to do their work. So that would be good to update. And then item 5, F5, I also found that odd, where I don't know what this means. We're saying as part of prior audits, auditor assisted with the preparation of the government-wide financial statements and related notes. The town designated an individual with suitable skill and experience to see the auditor services, but auditor assistance is due to a lack of town staff. I just don't know why we're putting that in there. I mean, if they're helping us prepare the financial statements and we've made that clear in other sections, I'm not sure what we're trying to say here.
So
It just
what
sounds
you
a
want
little
to strike?
scary if I'm the auditor.
Okay, so strike auditor assistance is due to lack of. That's what you're suggesting.
Sorry.
So basically, it's the last sentence.
I mean, I guess, do we need that entire item 5? What's the point of that item is my question. I mean, we've already stated elsewhere that they're going to assist us with preparation of the financials. So I would suggest striking that. Then I guess my other question on page 7, we have these insurance requirements listed, and I just guess my question is all of this standard? Do we get all this, for example, from PKF O'Connor Davies every year now, like workers' comp and general liability and auto insurance?
Yeah, right. So we would ask them for a certificate of insurance. So I'd have to look to see what the most recent one we have on file is. But yes, to answer your question, this is what we required in the previous RFP, and I believe we've been getting that from them.
Okay, I would just check against what we're actually getting. I'm only asking because I don't know the answer, but I saw this, professional liability / errors and omissions. I mean, I'm not familiar with, being on the other side of this equation. I've never seen this specifically, but it may be something related to municipalities, but let's just make sure if we're actually getting this stuff and it's standard, that's fine. I just, that's my question. I also, on the top of page 8, is there a reason here? So we ask about the RFP. We talk about the RFP, and on the top of page 8, we say no questions or clarifications shall be answered by phone, in person, or in any other manner than specified above. Do we mean that?
Yes, because the intent is you don't want people just popping in. They're supposed to submit their questions in writing.
Okay.
Because otherwise, right, if you didn't say that, then someone could just call you. They could stop by. So what we're trying to do is to funnel all the questions to me, and they're supposed to be in writing, and then I would circulate them through the committee for review.
Okay, I mean, as long as we can be responsive to people who are trying to, because I mean, I know I'm asking a lot of questions here, but I'm sure that, the firms will have some questions. So as long as we have a mechanism in place to respond timely, that's fine.
Right. So yeah, it's the whole idea that all the questions should be funneled to one person. And in this particular engagement, I'm listed as that person. I'm trying to see what page it's on. So it's on.
That's fine.
See here, but yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, so the idea is that, because we have people who call, then they'll drop in, and we want them to know they have to submit all their questions in writing, and they can't just show up.
I get it. Okay. I'll move on. On page 9, we say proposers are required to provide the following information about their audit approach. I wasn't sure what you meant by number 1. Describe the proposed segmentation of the engagement. What are we actually asking for there?
Well, how they break it down.
Meaning what? Timing?
You know, it could be timing, or it's all basically kind of similar to like the item below, like the work plan. So it's segmentation. It's how they're gonna. Back to it dovetails with the second item, but how they're going to break it up, how they're going to break up the engagement.
Okay, I would suggest, I don't know what that means. I don't think it's obvious. So if we're just trying to ask for the same thing that we're already asking for in item 2, which is outline a work plan and retired related time schedule, you might consider deleting that. And then in item 3, what is the use of EDP software? What are we asking for there? What's that mean?
That might be an outdated one.
Yeah, I don't know what EDP is supposed to mean. If you're asking them to describe the use
electronic data processing.
Okay, I mean, I think that asking them for their use to describe the use of their audit software or their technology is good, and they would probably tell us that anyway, because, but I would change that wording. It maybe say indicate the extent of use of proprietary or standard, audit software in the engagement, something like that.
Right.
And then item 4, I would strike out the words "and the sample sizes planned." They can't possibly answer that. I mean, they can describe their plan for statistical sampling, but they're not going to give us sample sizes. And then I thought item 9 was duplicative to item 4, so I would suggest we consider striking that. And then on page 10, the second paragraph, I thought this was very, restrictive. I mean, to say that they can't change staff without the express prior written permission of the town of Fairfield is really highly unusual. I don't think we should have that in there. I mean, I think, I understand people quit and get promoted and get switched around on engagements. I mean, it's just not reasonable to say that they need our prior written permission to do that. I mean, I think that we have to be confident that they have qualified people and that they are able to staff a professional services engagement without us having prior written approval every time a staff accountant has to do something. I would take that out, but.
Right, so I can give you the rationale for that paragraph. Some of these ones I know, some of them I don't know, but that one I know. So this one, it relates to them, basically you're going to interview a team, right? They're going to propose a team to you. And then the next thing is a week later, 2 weeks later, we hire them, and now they show up with a whole new group. So that was the intent of that, is to basically put them on notice. We don't want them to bait and switch, but I think where we'd be concerned about that is if they did it with the partner or the manager. I don't think we want to, Well, that's why. But that's what I'm saying. That's why it's in there, because, like I said, the idea is who they're presenting or they're proposing to to do the engagement. That if they're going to make changes, that we want to know that they're going to make changes ahead of time. Right, but I'm saying. So I don't think it's reasonable to put that in for any staff person. I think if you want to say we would want prior written approval before they change the audit partner, or perhaps even the audit manager, but to put that in for a blanket pre-written approval for any staff on the engagement, Well,
I
no,
don't
it
think
says,
that we want that.
yeah, engagement partners, managers, and other supervisory staff and specialists.
So even a
But
senior?
those are high. Well, yeah, it's supposed to be basically it's the team. I think who's the team is. So I don't think it's down to the admin person, but it's the team, whoever they're presenting to. Is going to be part of the engagement. I mean, we could
Okay,
go through and we could.
I get you. I mean, Caitlin, have we ever done this? Do we pre-approve? We get written pre-approval if they change the senior or something like that?
Well, the weird part is we've had Joe so long as a partner at all the various firms for the last 15 years, so that hasn't really come up. He has had, I'm not even sure what you call it. I guess the manager has changed because we've had Matt, like this person for a couple of years, and before that it was a woman, Catherine. I don't know that we approve them per se, but there have been new managers. But it's always been Joe throughout the course of my lifetime at Fairfield.
Yeah, I would just say to you guys, I mean, if you really want to put that in there, stick to what matters. I mean, I don't think that, again, I don't think you want to make this term so onerous, like to ask for, this might not sound like a lot to us, but, to put in a term that they need to get pre-written approval, if they change the senior on the engagement. If that's not something we normally do or we care about, I would maybe consider either taking it out or maybe changing it to just the partner and manager. That would be my suggestion, but I'll leave it up to you guys. I don't think going below that is, I am sensitive to Gerald's, comments. No, we don't want to have the bait and switch where they bring, their all-star team to a proposal, and then after they win the engagement, you end up with a completely different team. I get that. But I think that, the key is the most senior members of the team. That would be my opinion, but I'll leave that up to you guys.
I mean, I would like to see that they have a consistent team for the whole audit, that they don't move people around during the course of the audit. So whoever starts off a given year should stay on that audit.
Yeah, agreed. And that's in their own interest to do that as well, right? Because otherwise they're operating on a fixed fee here, and it doesn't do them any good to switch people around. But it's the whole prior written approval thing here and who we want to extend that to. So anyway, I'll move on. Item G, prior engagements with the town of Fairfield. I guess I'm questioning why we're asking for this, because we would already know this, wouldn't we? I mean,
We may or may not know it, because in other words, because if we know the incumbent, but if someone had done something, like say he had done, like kind of what's listed, an audit, a management advisory service, or another. So what we're asking them to do is to provide it just in lieu of, just in case type of thing. In other words, like I'm relatively new. Caitlin's been here for a long time. Jared's relatively new. But the point is that we asked them to provide it just in case there was an oversight, or it could have been something years and years ago. So I think that's why that's in there. It's kind of like as a catch-all, and I use it like kind of as a carryover from like if we're going, not that it relates really to this, but if you're going out to bid for a service, typically within that service you would ask the companies to give you kind of an overview of anything they've done for the town, and sometimes it's current things and sometimes it's years and years back, or it could even be as a sub to somebody. And so in other words, we wouldn't know who they were until they told us.
yeah,
so I think that's
I get it. I'm not really, to be honest, I'm not sure how that's going to factor into our scoring of the RFP. And I just see that as a fair amount of work for somebody like Joe to do, because basically he's going to have to take all the engagements, divide it up by staff hours, compile all that information. I'm not really sure what we're getting from that, to be honest. And
well, yeah, I think it lists more so that showing that they have experience working with the town. I think that's what in lieu of, because you want to see if someone's worked for the town or with the town, and so I think that's why that was kind of thrown.
I understand why it's there. Why can't you just put list separately all engagements in the last 5 years, period, something like that, right?
Yeah, that would be better. I think,
That's
because
all.
even then for Joe, it's okay, because I'm saying that's a lot of information. I just don't know if that's helpful for us.
And I take it you want that in there, Gerald, because what if we had an engagement with some outside company and we think they didn't do a very good job? That might
Well,
hurt us.
well, right, and
Little
that's
things like
and that's
that,
kind of
right?
like, yeah, it's right. It's what we don't know. That's kind of what I'm getting at. It's
Oh, I
so
get
when you
it.
ask. So again, so we could for brevity, we could kind of maybe take out some of these things or some of the requirements.
Yeah,
But it
maybe
was,
just the list separately all engagements. I think John had a good suggestion there.
Yep.
Because, for
Okay.
instance, the Board of Ed could hire them to do some kind of consulting, or the Parking Authority had a separate auditor. So I think it's supposed to find out those type of,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, no,
Right,
I
and
think
that's-
it's
there's no
good. I
conflict.
just, I guess I was more focused on all that detail we were asking them to provide and whether
so
we
basically
needed that.
just you. Right, so you're talking the words ranked on the basis of total staff hours. So take out that requirement. You think that's too
Yeah, maybe
erroneous?
just say list separately all engagements, for the town of
Within the
Fairfield,
last 5.
the last 5 years by type of engagement, audit, management, advisory
That's it.
services, other, period. That's easy. And
Yep.
probably for most of them, it'll be NA, and then, maybe somebody
Yeah,
will have
right.
one item there, but they don't have to go back and try and pull their records and, figure out
Yep.
how many hours they spent and all that sort of thing.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. And then, H is good. I just, on the bottom, on evaluation procedures and criteria,
Okay.
we're saying the written proposals shall be initially evaluated based on the following criteria. The last one, do we need them to submit that, given that all this information is publicly available? Like 2 ACFRs that they issued, we did the research, we've seen all these reports. Do we need to have that there?
Well, yeah. So the idea is that what you're supposed to be doing is to compare the firms based on their submission. So it's not like you get something and then you go out and you do searching on the internet and say, oh, they have this. So you want to be able to compare them side by side. So you give them a list of all the things you want them to submit. So when they give you your proposal, you can kind of go through the list and just put like check marks, check, 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 check. And then the things they're missing, you would highlight or circle. But if you don't do this,
I get you. Here's just my suggestion. I would say, as a member of the committee, I'm not going to sit here and review 2 ACFRs prepared by every firm, that submits. I mean, if they have an ACFR and if they've got a GFOA award, that's what I would want to know. I think what probably might be better there is if they are telling us, give us a list of the municipalities for which you issue, reports on their ACFRs. So we know, do they have other clients that they do this for? Do they issue ACFRs for, 50 towns in the state or whatever? But to give us 2 copies of ACFRs, I'm not sure what we're going to do with those. Mary?
So,
right.
Lori, I kind of disagree, because in prior submissions, we did review them and look at the reports and the quality of reports, and there was quite a bit of difference between the different firms on what they present and what the final product looks like. So
Okay.
I think that's something I would definitely like to say.
So even if they all have the GFOA awards, we went through and looked at them?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Actually,
sure,
I can remember they copied them, and we had a huge stack of them.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I concur with Claire. So it is.
Okay,
It's surprising when you see them, because they're different. They just, you look at the quality of the work, the reporting, and so the idea is that they're supposed to give you the ones that they're kind of the cream of the crop. So if they're giving you ones that are lackluster, then that's kind of a blemish on them.
Okay. Yeah, do we ask them somewhere which, or we just know from our benchmarking how many of these they do?
I don't have to look and see. I mean, we could
Well, I
add
thought-
that. But I think there
Isn't
is
that
something.
kind of in item H above, on page 10?
So
Yeah,
we
I mean that's
say-
similar
Oh, yes,
engagement
we
with
do.
other.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Performed in the last 5 years. Okay, great. All right.
Right.
Okay, so forget that one. I didn't,
One thing you could add to it, though, is the size of the municipality, because I think that we would want to see, like, who audits municipalities similar to us versus
Right.
like a little tiny town.
Right. So that I don't. I mean, I guess you could ask, but we could look at the list. We have the list of the populations, so we could do that. That's like something I think we could do relatively simple.
Okay.
yeah, I think that's a good thing because, you know, for example, our current auditor, I think we are by far their largest client. You know, most of the other municipalities they audit are quite a bit smaller. So it's just a good point to understand when we're looking at, you know, the reports because, you know, to some degree, you know, when we talk about the quality of the ACFR, let's not forget that this is, you know, these are the client's financial statements. You know, the firm obviously assists in the process, but ultimately the final product in terms of wording and footnotes, et cetera, is, you know, is based on the control and the approval of the client. So, you know, would absolutely expect that there are differences in terms of how they're presented, but all of the requirements that are in there under the GFOA standards and the fact that the firms have multiple clients that they issue ACFRs for is kind of a helpful thing, you know, for me. And I think Mary's point, you know, who's doing a range of these from like the cities down to towns our size, you know, big, small, et cetera. That's just helpful to know in terms of the firm's qualifications. And I just basically had two other comments and then I'll be quiet, but on page 13, again, I think this is a very key thing here. We need to make sure that we're very clear here on what reports have to be issued. And this right now is not in agreement, I don't think, with what we've got up front. So here we say, you know, the cost proposal covers the town audit, the CAFR, and report of internal controls, which again, I don't think is a thing, as well as the federal and state single audit report. If there are other reports, whether it be Board of Ed reports, Parking Authority, et cetera, we just need to make sure that they're all listed here so it's clear what's being included and that we've got apples to apples from all the firms. And then my only last comment is on the, and it's a broad comment, but on the terms and conditions, I just, you know, my impression reading this is that a lot of this stuff sounds like we're going out to bid for, I don't know, a construction project or something. I mean, this is professional services. So things like, you know, FOB destination and permits and,
Right.
you know, a bunch of this stuff doesn't seem to be applicable to me. And I guess,
Yeah, we could.
yeah, did we look at this when we did the proposal or the RFP for the JRIB when we went out for bid for the actuary? I mean, is this comparable to what we had in that RFP?
Yes. So let me. So the rationale for that is we tended to do the terms and conditions. We carry them forward almost bid to bid, and then like on that page 14, you'll see we've stricken out like a bid bond. We don't require that. On the subsequent page, there's something called performance and labor bond. We strike through. So what I could do. I mean, if you think I can go through and do some more strike throughs. But the intent is that we don't want to, if we make them all unique for every single solicitation, it creates a lot more work, and so there's a tendency to miss things or not have something in. So basically, we throw the kitchen sink at it, and then if someone comes back and questions it, then we can go back and say, no, that doesn't apply, doesn't apply.
Okay, there's certain things I think for professional services, like I would take out the FOB destination thing. I would take out, for payment period, we have this thing in here, we reserve the right to retain 5% of the total bid amount, which is payable 90 days after final payment. I mean, I don't know how we do it with our current auditor. I assume maybe we hold the final payment until their final deliverables are received, but I don't know why we would wait 90 days. The guarantee equipment, materials, and or work executed should be guaranteed for a period of 1 year. Catalog reference, there's just a bunch of stuff in here that, I get what we're trying to do, but maybe if it's for stuff that's clearly not applicable, we can just take it out.
Okay.
And then on the last page, which is probably one of the key pages, this is the scoring form. So basically we have, we have this in here. I don't know, I guess what this says is that 35% of the scoring is going to be based on the fees. And then 65% is going to be based on, broadly, the qualifications of the firm and their audit approach as they describe it to us in their references. So, I'm not sure we would be quite so finite when we were scoring it. I think it'll be a little more subjective, but I mean, I'm not objecting to this. I don't know what anyone else thinks, but I think these are a lot of categories to be scoring in, and I'm not sure we'll actually make our decision that way, I guess is my reaction, but.
You gotta, unfortunately, and Gerald, you may comment on this, you gotta have some type of an objective criteria in case we're sued. So I get what you're saying, Gerald. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, that's exactly why it is. Because again, back to the comments about why are we asking for things. So what we do is it's supposed to be, all of the submissions are supposed to be graded on what they actually present, not what we think or not what additional or supplemental research that we do. So at the end of the day, what you'll have is this items on page 20 is what you're supposed to be grading each of the firms on. And so what we've done typically, because it is a qualification-based selection process, so what you do is as you mentioned, is there's about 65% of the fee is based on their qualifications, the audit, their understanding of the engagement, and then there's only 35% relates to their fee. And again, it's the idea being if someone comes in with a lower fee, we give them higher points, but they may not necessarily have higher scores in the other categories. But at the end of the day, we want to be able to basically put everyone on an even as we can type of an evaluation. So when and if they do come back, we can say, well, we showed you, in the RFP, this is what you'd be graded on, and then this is what happened. In other words, this is why you didn't score as well as you think you should have.
Yeah, no, I get all that. As I look at these categories, acceptability of audit approach is so generic. It's hard for me to fathom that could be scored differently, because no firm is going to come to us with an unacceptable audit approach. They're going to come to us with an audit approach that's, kind of in accordance with gas. And so it's fine. I realize that we have to do this. I was just sort of questioning the amount of the breakdown here, but I'm fine with it. It was just sort of a comment. I do think ultimately a lot of these things sort of blend together. Understanding the engagement, to me, it's really hard to separate that from acceptability of audit approach. But
Well, yes.
yeah.
So on that one, it would be basically a narrative. It'd be explaining, and I think we mentioned it earlier. Kind of tell us how you're going to do something, and so then they would give us a narrative, and then you'd be able to go back and say, well, either they understand it or they don't understand. Again, it's all based on what we perceive.
I gotcha. I'm just, knowing what these things say, it was just a comment, but I'm not gonna push back against it. I think that breaking, when you do the scoring, you can score it on as many or as few categories as you want, right? And so as I looked at some of these categories, it would be hard for me to, differentiate between some of these things. That was my initial reaction, but I'm fine with it.
Right. So that goes back to, again, the submission. So when the people submit, we ask them to submit in a certain order. And so at the end of the day, it should make it a little easier for you to go back and complete the scoring.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
Is it the committee members and Jared and Caitlin on the committee? I mean, who makes up the committee? Is it just us three, Lori and or
yes?
Mary?
So I can comment on the last one. So the last time that I've been here that we did this, we had 3 people from the town, and so it was say Caitlin. It would have been Caitlin, Jared, and myself, and there could have been maybe in this case Mr. Bremer wanted to be involved. I'm not sure, but there was about 3, and then I believe there was 3 people on the audit committee. So there was 3 members. I think that's how we did it, and then we scored, and then what we did is we had interviews. So again, in a kind of a mile-high view, say we got 6 firms that made submissions, then we would review all the submissions, and then from those submissions say, okay, of those 6, we want to interview, say 4. And then we narrow it down and interview the 4, and then you basically regrade those 4. And in some cases, you might even go too deep. In other words, 2 sets of interviews. In other words, interviewing 4, narrowing it to 2, and then interviewing the finalists.
All right. Thanks.
But previous one, we only got 2 submissions. So it was that secondary process that I was just describing didn't happen.
Okay. So, I guess what's the, Mary, can I ask a follow-up question for,
Sure.
So Jared, when we met last time, one of the things you guys were going to do is to, proactively reach out to at least some of the key players to make sure everybody was aware that this thing would be out there. Have you guys done that?
Nothing like that has been done yet.
Okay, because I thought I heard that, we suspected at least that one of the issues, with the last process was that, we only got 2 responses. And so obviously we want to make sure that we get at least several responses. So I just think that's important. So what's the plan on that?
So I might defer to Gerald on this because I want to make sure that we're doing everything properly and, not, and making sure that it's going to be posted on our website. So for anybody who wants to, they'll be able to submit. Right,
but just making sure people are aware that it's out there. Yeah. We talked about that. Not
right. So yeah,
favoring anyone, but.
Right. So yeah, this is Gerald. So I can tell you the last time what I did is I went basically we post it to the town's website. Then it's called the Department of Administrative Services. They have what's called the bid portal. We post it to that website. Then what we did is we went through the list of all the firms and we emailed them all the firms. We emailed them the notice that it was the RFP was issued and the whole timeline. Now, what we typically don't do is we don't tell them ahead of time that stuff is coming, and because it creates like this vortex. In other words, if I said, well, it's coming, then every week I'm going to get emails, when is it coming? So typically when we issue is when we issue it. So to your point, yeah, I guess you could do it, but it just creates a lot of problems.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we had a mechanism to make sure that, we don't just post it and then nobody knows it's on the website, so that we get some responses. Okay.
Right. What we'll do is we make a concerted effort to notify people. But what happens is just to give you an idea is that, I'll give you multitude of instances where I will email a firm and I'll email somebody in that firm, and then say for whatever reason they'll come back and say, well, I didn't get a notice. Well, that's not my responsibility to follow up with them. All I can do is to send the notice. So what's happened, it does happen with a lot of the things we do, is someone will call us a week later, say, I didn't get a notice. Well, we'll go back and we'll say, this is where we sent it to. And then they complain to us that, well, you shouldn't have sent it to them. You should have sent it to me. It says, well, I'm not, Karnak here. I don't know. So all I can do is to send it to who's ever listed. So we do our best to notify everybody, but is it 100% successful every single time? I would say probably not, but we score pretty high.
And similar to job postings, there are other places we can post it. I know that a lot of these kinds of contracts are also, or RFPs are run through GFOA, and there's a message board there where we can list it. And there are a lot of, it's not just the town officers who are members of GFOA, but there are a lot of the professional companies that are also members who would have access to it as well.
All right. Well, it sounds like you guys have it covered. I don't know because I wasn't here last time, but I would suspect if we only got two responses last time, something went wrong. Either people didn't know it was happening or they didn't have adequate time to respond. So, I think the key is getting it out timely and then making sure people can know it's there. That's all.
Right. So I can comment on that. So I worked in Norwalk prior to coming here to Fairfield. So I was in the city of Norwalk for 15 years, and then I came here to Fairfield. So I've been to Fairfield about 6 years. So in Norwalk, what we would do is we would change auditors. We had there's actually I think it's with the finance committee. They would change auditors every 12 years. It was in their bylaws, their notes. So what happens is as part of the engagement, and I could show you this, is the companies ask, how long has your auditor been with you? You're happy with the current auditor. Do you intend to change your auditor? And depending on our response, that basically, because the last time I could show you, we probably had 10 companies ask us questions, and then only 2 people responded. So this is my opinion, is that if you keep an auditor for if we hire the same firm again, we'll be with them for 25 years. So it kind of, in some regards, not much as you might like the continuity, it does discourage competition, because the inference is you're just going to stay with that same auditor. So why am I wasting my time making a submission? So that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably fair. I think that they're trying to figure out if we're really trying to do a true evaluation, or if we're just sort of fishing for a lower fee or something. And I think, we're here trying to do a sincere evaluation, right? So, I hope we don't do anything to discourage responses. That's all. So, because I know everyone wants to have a fair process. So, okay. Well, thank you for that. I just, so in terms of timing then, like I said, I have some minor typos and a couple things I'll email to you guys, but,
Okay.
what was our timing? I think we said a week from now we would have this posted?
Well, on the solicitation, what I have now is I just had it coming back Thursday, March 24th, which is, it's basically almost a month and a half from now, but only because I was trying to get it well in advance of your May 5th appointment date, but we can move it, we can adjust the timeline. So, but it was.
No, I'm sorry, Jared. When are we going to have this posted for people to look at it? Not when
wasn't
are
going to
we
be
asking
until
for
March.
response back?
No, we were going to post it at the beginning of March. That was what the draft that you have in front of you. It's basically the submissions are due back March 24th. It's on the first
We weren't
page.
going to post this until the beginning of March?
No, no, I'm saying that was, I threw out a schedule, is what I'm saying. So if you wanted to adjust the schedule, that's acceptable. I'm just saying that's so that what the draft you have in front of you, it was going to be posted again, giving your committee time to, because again, timing wise, I didn't know if if it would be.
We talked about this already at the last meeting. I'm just asking for a
Right.
refresh of the memory. Like I thought the last meeting, we talked about, we would review this tonight, we'd have it posted by a certain date. What was that date? That's all I'm asking. I didn't think it was March, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't
Right.
recall that.
I'm trying to find the backup because I think we had it in the backup.
We may, I think you're right, Jared.
And what
Yes,
is
I mean,
adequate response time for firms to put together this presentation?
Well, yeah. So on this particular one, I'll tell you just, and only because, like I said, this is what I had in my head. I had March 1st as a release date. We can adjust this. This isn't set in stone. So I had March 1st was the release date, and then I had them basically to submit questions to us. I believe I had a week from that, so it would be March 8th, and then basically we would respond to them by the following week, and then they would make their submissions due by that, what did I just say, the 24th. So 3 weeks is usually a pretty good turnaround. You could make it longer. I would not advise to make it shorter.
Oh.
Jared,
So
did
my two
you
cents
find
is
the,
to get it
I'm still looking.
out as soon as
Okay.
you can, yeah. But
yeah, I mean, we
Well,
should get it out as soon as we can.
Right.
I
So
don't care if you
again,
give it until March 24th, but if you can submit it in 2 weeks or so, or 3 weeks, do it. Right?
Yep.
Or post it.
Yes.
Is that okay with everyone?
Well, what I'd like to
Yeah.
know what the date, we talked about this schedule last time, and I thought we had a pretty good schedule. So I'm not sure why it would take 3 weeks from today, but Jared, did you find that?
No, I'm looking.
Okay. I mean, and John, to your point, I think the more time the firms have, the more likely they are, to respond.
yeah, so I can comment on that. Firms are typically procrastinators like myself. So what they'll do is they're not going to do anything. If I gave them 6 weeks, they're not going to do anything for 4 of those 6 weeks. So again, that 3-week timeline that I mentioned earlier, that seems to work really good. Again, and we can adjust it. We can move all these dates back a month. I mean, like I said, I threw this out because I wanted it, afford everyone enough time. And these are just, benchmark dates. They're not not cast in stone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to assume everyone's going to procrastinate because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But the sooner we can get it out there, we should just get it off our plate and done, I think. But I'll try to look at my notes too, but I thought and Gerald, again, I thought we put out a schedule last time, so that's just what I'm asking for.
Yeah,
Gerald.
we did. I'm just trying to locate it.
Okay.
Hey, Lori, I think, who found the date? Who posted them?
Oh, we did?
So I can.
What are they, Caitlin?
I think from what Cruda said, so I'm just reading your notes, it said, I think in the minutes it said February 7th, and then on the 10th it gets published.
That rings a bell to me. Thank you. Yeah.
So
that
you
gives
want
them
me to
time
adjust
to
it?
come back, ask questions about the RFP, then it gives them time
Right.
to respond. So we want to publish this on the 7th, which is,
All right, so it's a Monday,
that's
next
a week,
Monday.
that's in a week. Okay.
Yeah,
So it says the
yeah,
10th.
it's a week
It says the
from,
minutes say February 7th, but then it gets published on the 10th.
10th,
So I guess
okay.
maybe you guys sign off on it by the 7th, and then a couple days later it's posted.
Perfect.
yeah, so what I can do then is I'll go back and adjust the schedule based on a release date of the 10th.
Great.
Because I think you have a bunch of edits anyway, so when you forward the edits back, I could update the draft with those edits. I'll circulate it internally to Caitlin and to Jared, and then we'll forward you a copy. And then, as Caitlin just commented, say on that 7th you'd approve it, and then by the 10th we have it posted and published.
Thank you so much.
Is there an interview date listed in this RFP somewhere?
No, I think I think we could do that. We could post a full schedule. So what I had is it's on page 5 under item H, which is a tentative schedule. So what I did was I truncated that schedule, so you have auditor selection. All I have listed is the due date for the proposals, and then I have the appointments. So right after the submissions are due, we could give ourselves, say, 2 weeks to review them, and then you can schedule. So in essence, we could schedule. I could come up with a schedule
Wait,
that I could present
I'm
to you.
sorry, Jared, I don't want to interrupt you. I'm a little sensitive to our timing here because we got to jump to Board of Finance. We discussed this and we basically set our committee schedule based on dates that we had already. So rather than
Right, I
recreating
think,
the wheel,
yeah, so,
it's
right,
back.
so Jared had,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
no,
Yeah,
so
Jared
just,
has that, so
that's what it is.
we could do that. Yeah, we could insert tentative dates in there, and then again, that we could target to get those to you by the end of the week. So we
Right.
could
So the dates
expand that.
we intended to review it, and Mary, you might have, I think Jen sent it before, but we had the extra meeting scheduled in there, I want to say in April or at some point. And I think the idea was to have oral presentations during that time frame. So.
Right. So the schedule Jen sent was
Yep.
Tuesday, April 19th.
Yeah, that's probably it. Okay, so again, I don't know whether we need to put it in there or not, but just, it's good that we all know that that's the time frame. So we'll just, I think that time frame that we talked about last time made sense. So, hopefully we're all still good with it.
Any additional questions? John, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Gerald, will you get back to us with an updated draft before you actually submit it, if you're going to try to submit it next week? Okay.
Right. So what I was, I think Lori had mentioned that she had some additional edits. So what my thought was is when she gave those to me, I'll go through the RFP. I'll meet with Jared and Caitlin, and we'll go through and we make sure we capture the other edits that we talked about tonight's meeting, plus the edits that Lori's going to have. We'll incorporate those all in. We'll review it and then get that out to you hopefully by the end of this week, or say Thursday, Friday, and then on the following Monday, you would get back with your approval, and then we would publish that following Thursday, or that current for Thursday.
Okay. And does anyone else review it? Tom Bremer or the town attorney or anyone, or it's usually just the finance department?
In the past, it was just an internal review. So it would be myself, Caitlin, and Jared. And then I would give Tom Bremer. He's going to be on the very first page of the document. There's a signature required. So I sign it, and then the first select woman signs it. But typically I present these to Mr. Bremer. So him and I go over them. So in this case, I will mention to him that about the timeline we discussed, and see if he wanted to see it ahead of time to review it.
Okay. Okay. Anything else we need to know? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Foley. And
You're
I
welcome,
guess we'll
Ms.
now
Claire.
move on to item number 4, to hear, consider, and approve the draft minutes of February 2nd, 2021, June 28th, 2021, October 26th, 2021, December 7th, 2021, and January 4th, 2022. Is it okay if we take them as a group, or do I need to take them separately?
The group's fine, and go ahead, Jared. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just going to say, I don't have a problem if you take them as a group, but I do have one correction to one of them.
Okay.
And I'm abstaining on each one of them because I wasn't a part of the committee. So, but go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to provide us with that correction?
Sure. It's has to do with the June 28th, 2021 minutes, item number 2. And the last sentence there says, Mr. Schmidt said, purchasing policy will be discussed at the first BOF meeting in September and voted on in the fall. And I didn't say that. I think there were other people who were talking, and somebody else might have said that. And then, so I just like to have that stricken from the minutes.
Okay. So where exactly was that in the?
So it's item number 2 on the June 28th minutes. It's the last the very last sentence in item number 2.
Got it. Okay. So, Prue, do you have that information?
I do, thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. So I think we'll do the amendment first. I'll take a motion to amend the June 28th, 2021 minutes. Paragraph 2, the last sentence, we're going to strike that line.
I'll make that motion.
Lori will make the motion. Can I have a second? Or I guess I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's Lori and I, and John abstains. Okay, so now we will take the motion in total to cover all the minutes I previously read. Do I need to reread that?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, so I will take a motion to consider and approve the minutes of the meetings for February 2nd, June 28th, October 26th, December 7th, and January 4th. Motion to approve. Lori, I'll second it. All in favor? Lori and I. John Matola abstains. And we're on to item 5, our last item to adjourn. Before we adjourn, are there any questions or comments by anyone? Updates? Okay, so I will make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. So that was unanimous.
Is
Okay.
this the same for the next meeting? Okay,
Yep.
we'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we
Thank
can
you,
just
guys.
stay on to the next meeting? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.